Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to MetalCon Live. I'm Kaylin, the trade show and event specialist for MetalCon, and I'll be your host for today. So today's session is structuring your company for maximum productivity, and it's being presented by Danny Kerr of Breakthrough Academy. Today's presentation is the fourth part of our six-part MBA series. The final two will be presented at MetalCon this year. The final two sessions of the MBA program are going to be presented on Wednesday and Thursday at MetalCon, and the information on the screen has all the programming listed, or the programming for this special program listed. MetalCon is just a few short weeks away, and if you haven't registered yet, now is the time. With all new experiences and over 40 hours of education, it is absolutely the can't miss event of the year. We're also introducing a brand new program designed exclusively for architects called the Architects Experience, which features exclusive programming by PSMJ Education, plus a private tour of the Salvador Dali Museum and a keynote from its architect, Jan Weymouth. Be sure to tune in for a very special hour-and-a-half presentation on Monday, September 13th, designed specifically for our exhibitors. This is going to be a brand new MetalCon Live. Join MetalCon's own Frank Stasiowski and Mark Swaggerty for your guide to traffic stopping sales. And we also have another very special MetalCon Live coming up on Wednesday, September 15th, which is going to be an hour-and-a-half presentation with an all-star panel from the MCA's MCM Alliance, and you can earn AIA HSW credits for that course as well. At this point, I'm going to hand it right back over to Danny. Danny, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much. All right, so let me just share my screen. We'll get rolling. There we go. Boom. Okay. And actually my chat window too. If everyone wants to throw a quick hey, hello, or maybe just tell me where you guys are from, be curious to see where everyone's at in the chat box, that would be awesome. So if most of you obviously, I'd assume, know Zoom like the back of your hand at this point. And if you don't, you probably lived under a rock. But give me a quick, just in the chat box, hey, hello, just so I know you found it. And I have some questions as we go through today's presentation. So it just helps with conversation, as I obviously can't hear y'all. That would be good. So Marshall, I see you first the punch. St. Joseph, sweet, good day. Awesome, man. Cool. What else do we got here? James, yeah, afternoon. Let the rest of you guys find the chat box would be good. All right. So everyone can see my screen. Give me a quick heads up. Yes, no, yeah. What's up, Cleveland? I was just in Cleveland, Jared. I was actually just there, down at the, what hotel is that? I was right by the water. It's beautiful. Everyone can see my screen? Yeah, okay, cool. In Brazil, sweet. All right, welcome. Okay, so we have a pretty packed hour, and yeah, there's a lot to talk about. And I would say in this presentation, this should really, for a lot of you, give you kind of what you probably have all been thinking about, some structure to how to run and organize your people, your processes in your organization. And for those who are owners that are listening right now, actually help you pull away a little bit from the day-to-day. I think a lot of us get pretty inundated with, our job is owning and running the company, and then a little bit of everybody else's job as we try to manage our people and try to drive forward to, to hit year-end financials, all of the above. So what we're going to talk about today is how do you step back and put your team a little bit more in charge? How do you regain some of the time that you're spending doing their tasks and actually hold real accountability and responsibility onto them to actually go help you hit the goals for the company. For the owner, as you grow, it shouldn't be your job to be the doer of all the things you do every day. You really need to start to think about, how do I spend more time leading the people I have and building good processes and systems to help them? And so that'd be a big theme today. We're going to talk about saving some time. So how do you reclaim 5 hours a week within your week? And what I would arguably say is use those 5 hours in a much more productive way towards leading and developing your team. So that is what we'll be going through. So with all of my presentations, we always give downloads and templates. So everything we talk about today, there's going to be like a resource. So you get example employment agreement. We're going to give you a little reclaim 5 hours a week exercise, compensation and bonus structure template that actually helps you figure out if you're going to put in bonuses next year, like what are the different types and how could you do that for your people to help incentivize them. So everything we go through, take down notes. think about what you want to take away from this, but just know that you'll also be getting a bunch of resources and downloads to actually work on a lot of this stuff leaving today's session. So I'll have a link in the chat box at the very end. I think it's important if you're not in the chat box or if you're on the phone or something like that, if you have an ability to get in that chat box by the end, that would be good, because I will give you all a link to get some of these resources, which should be good. Should be good. Bit about me. So I'm from Canada. I'm probably going to say a couple foreign words like a boot, right? Igloos, I don't know, poutine, toque. Actually, who knows what a toque is? I wish I could give you a prize if you knew, but I can't because it's digital. Anyone know what a toque is? I'll give you a hint. It is what you guys call a beanie. Anyways, irrelevant information. Stock cap, yeah, totally. So other than that, as long as you can get over my accent, we should be good. I've been told it's not terrible. It's not too different, but anyway, I will say a few weird words to you. My background, I've grown up in business. So I've been in business for myself since I was 18 years old. I started a contracting business when I was 18, and it was actually under a franchise organization. Have any of you heard of College Pro Painters? Probably a lot of us have. If you're in the northern states, they're all over the place. If you're in the southern states, you probably have never heard of them. If you're in Brazil, you definitely haven't heard of them. But what it is a franchise organization to help young students learn how to run a painting company. So it's kind of a random idea. Really shaped who I was as a young person. And I spent about 10 years with them, going from running a franchise to actually working and developing the corporate model for Western Canada. So I went through the highs and lows of 2008 while that was all going on. I definitely overworked myself. There was times for sure in the summer where I was working 80 hours a week just to keep up with everything. And I would say, especially in 2008, I, instead of working harder, had to really learn how to work, that classic analogy, work smarter. There's a lot of things I did that we're going to talk about today where I really relinquished control. I had at that point about 150 staff that were under me, and I needed to learn to stop doing what they were doing and actually just really hold accountability to them, which would be a big theme of today. Now, I know that not everybody has 150 staff under their command, but I will say, even if you have 5, 10, 20, 30 people that you oversee, what we're going to talk about today should be very useful and very practical. So I've now stepped away from the franchising world. I run a company called Breakthrough Academy. We have about 32 people on our team. So I'm still actively using everything we talk about to this day. And it's neat. It's basically almost like a franchise system for contractors to use without them having to buy a franchise. So how do you build your financials, your org structures, your job descriptions, your training processes, your recruiting campaigns? We've done it all. Basically, we've templated it all out, and then we teach it to contractors to implement in their own company. So I'll talk a bit more about that as we get going, but a lot of what we'll go through is my own personal experience, and also what I would say I've observed just managing all these companies. We have about 415 right now actively working with us in our teams. So I've seen kind of like the bird's eye view of the contracting space, and we'll try and give you just like the tangible nuggets of things you could do based on the patterns I've seen out there. So with all that said, what are we actually talking about here? First thing is we're going to just discuss essentially like the concepts of what is an organizational structure and how do you actually structure a company for productivity and growth. And I think a lot of us maybe have pieces of this in place, but you'll see as we go how I've stitched it all together to be like one big machine, which you'll see as we get going. Outcomes, I'd like you to have a way to kind of finalize your organizational chart and like understand what roles and deliverables are for your company. So I'll give you some good examples of that. And then from there, like I said, I'm going to leave you with some knowledge and obviously some tools that you can download to rebuild your own organizational structure to make it more conducive for growth. So how to get the most out of today? A couple things. Like I said, I'm going to go through a lot. You don't need to do everything I'm going to talk about. What I'm talking about here today will probably take about a year to fully implement. If you just took one thing, you're like, out of everything we do today, this is the one thing I'm going to implement before, say, December, that would be tons. So write down notes if you love taking notes. If you don't, that's okay too. But just pick one thing out of everything that you're actually going to go do. Obviously, the chat box is a great way to communicate. So if you have some thoughts, ideas, you want to get more into some certain topics, feel free to ask questions as we get rolling. I will be live reading it as we go, so I'm always happy to engage in that way. I already said this earlier, but look for each concept that we go through and how it's actually linked. Like each piece links to the next. And I think even if you have all the things that we talk about today, I think the way we've linked it, the way we've built a machine out of organizing your people, I think if nothing else, that is a pretty cool thing to appreciate out of what we've done. And then, like I said, use the templates, they're free and they'll be downloadable at the end. So Marshall, yes, it's great, eh? It is great. Okay, so agenda, we're going to start with just some terminology. So I'm just going to go through like, what is a role? What is a deliverable? What is it in accountability? Just so we're all on the same page. And then we're actually going to talk about how do you use these terms to actually rebuild your organizational chart, which I'll get into as we go. Then we're going to talk a bit about goals. So how do you take your organizational chart and actually hold attention to the goals or the roles that people are accountable for, the things that they're accountable for hitting. So lots of us have different maybe team meetings or one-on-one coaching, or maybe none of the above. I'll give you a good example of how to actually spend some time with your team members each week and hold tension to what they need to hit year end to be able to hit the company goal itself. And then we'll finish off with your responsibilities as a leader, which really comes down to all the concepts we talk about are great. It's a 1-hour webinar. To actually make lasting change, you need to change the way you spend your time. And we'll get into how to do that and just some thoughts on that as well. So that is where we're heading. So quick thing for the chat window for everybody is a question for you. So first thought is, I'm sure all of us felt this before, but you ever feel like employees are kind of showing up just for their paycheck, right? And if so, what is it you think actually causes this? So if you want to give me some thoughts in the chat window, that would be great. There's different types of relationships that we build with our people over time. And I've found that if it's all about how much they're getting paid, and that's kind of the end of the conversation, it becomes kind of almost like a transactional relationship, right? Are you paying me for this? Are you not paying me for this? Am I getting a raise next year? Am I not getting a raise? It's, I will work as hard as you're willing to pay me. And if you stop paying me as much, or if it's harder to make that same amount of money, I'm going to give you less productivity. I'm sure we've all felt that. So Tiffany says, same, they are fulfilled for their work. Yes, I feel like it's a lack of investment. Totally. And so what often happens in most organizations is there is no alignment between the team and the management team and even say the owner. And why this happens is because there's no direct goal or shining star or common ground that everybody shares to kind of get there, right? Yeah, they need a vision. Totally, Marshall. And in what we're going to talk about today is we're going to try and unravel like taking the vision of the organization and building it down into what people do every single day. So they're showing up because they're getting a lot out of it. They're learning, they're building themselves in their careers. They're making more money as a result of it. They feel like they're a part of something, right? If you're, on a high level sports team, the goalie, the defenseman, the forwards, everybody has their piece to play, and nobody's just doing it because they're told to do it. They're doing it because they're trying to support the team as a whole, and they know where they stand, they know what they do, and they know how what they do makes a big difference, and they can see that clearly. There's a lot of what we're going to get into. So thanks for some thoughts in the chat box. Okay, so let's start with some of this terminology. What are roles? What are deliverables? What are accountabilities? Some of it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll give you a few thoughts just so we're all on the same page. So the first thing in any good organizational structure is a role, right? Like, what is the things that your people do? And a role is not, generally we have some people in production, some people managing them. We have someone in the office, we have someone doing sales. It's trying to understand how are the people in my organization utilized to their maximum capacity given the types of roles we design. So I'll give you some examples of this. Salespeople, people who are really good at selling, who are good at building relationships, they're good at closing deals, they're good at meeting new people and building something, building something out of that. Those types of people, what do they naturally kind of suck at? So if you think about it, maybe just give me some thoughts in the chat box. People who are really good at sales, what is their Achilles heel? And it's not everybody, but it's I'd say the majority of salespeople. Where's their weak spot? Let's see if you guys can identify it. Technical, yeah, interesting. Yeah, you're on the right track, Tiffany. Yeah, what else? What else do you guys think? What are the things that good salespeople are kind of weak at? Attention to detail, boom. Listening. Good salespeople shouldn't be bad at listening. But what I would say is, yes, details and understanding how to kind of drop the contract at the end, make sure everything's entered properly in the CRM system, doing the paperwork exactly. I'm going to say your name wrong. Nasia, I'm going to say it wrong. Those are totally all the things, right? And so when we build a sales organization, it's interesting to note how many of us don't actually think about, hey, why is the role of the sales guy to do all this paperwork and detailed work, and how much of it are they actually doing of that versus their job of sales? And if it's a lot, and if it's Naisa, okay, thank you. If it's a lot, and if it's a little bit, more than they're even doing in their sales role, it's a warning sign. It's a warning sign that the role is not designed properly for the type of person that would fulfill it, right? So one thing we do at our sales team is we have openers, I call them, closers, and administrators. And we have 3 different types of salespeople that all work together to achieve a common goal, right? And so now we've taken the burden off the salesperson from doing the admin because we have someone that helps with that. We've taken, actually, I've noticed too within salespeople, there's like people that love doing the intro. They build relationships really quickly. They love building the relationship, but they're not the greatest closers because they're scared of damaging the relationship when they have to ask for the sale. And so I've actually got openers, closers, and administrators, and the three of them work together as a team to do one, common goal, which we'll get into in a bit. So with all that said, actually, I'll give you one more analogy too. How many of you, give me a quick yes or no, how many of you have your sales teams and your production teams together? So whoever does sales also produces the job as well. Give me a quick yay or nay if you have that. So it's like, no, yes, yes, a couple of yeses, nopes, okay. This is still open for debate. I'm not saying this is the golden rule, but what I have found working with all these companies is that generally it's very challenging to get a sales and production manager to do a great job and even to find someone that's qualified to do that job. And why is that? It's because the art of sales and the art of production are two different things. Also, do you ever notice this? People go and book a bunch of work, or they get a big job landed, and then they get so focused on producing it, they don't line themselves up properly with work coming up, right? Even owners, if you're in sales and production at the same time, you're probably even guilty of that mistake at times. And so to have somebody have a role where they can have a sole focus and a purpose where they know exactly what they do, and they're not, derailed naturally in their role, helps people really get things done quickly. So I've always been a big, promoter of having a sales team and a production team, and then just having a really good way for them to communicate, because that is the one downfall when you do separate it, is the communication line between what was booked and what was produced there can be some crossed wires in that, right? But I would much rather work on that issue than trying to find someone who's capable of doing sales and production, and then also put them in a position where their focus is constantly being derailed because they have to focus on both, right? So anyways, just some examples of setting roles in organizations and things to think about when you're building out your roles. What is the right fit for the right types of people? And what is the most organic way to build the roles where people can focus and execute extremely well on what they do best? If that kind of makes sense. Okay. Next term we're going to go over, deliverables. This one might be new to a few of you, but I'm sure you're all familiar with the idea of this. This is the clear and measurable or tangible result that an employee must deliver to the company to create an ROI. So what does this mean? Well, in sales positions, it's pretty obvious. It's how much are you selling? What's your closing ratio? Things like that. And for a lot of us, if we have a sales team, we're fairly familiar with the idea of giving somebody a goal to go hit and then helping them get there. But we don't always do that with production. We don't always especially do that with our administrative teams. And how can we bake what I would call a deliverable or a number or a goal into every single role in the organization, so everybody has something to shoot for? Everybody has something to go for, right? Now they're not just showing up for a paycheck, they're showing up to achieve their goal by year end or by quarter end or by month end, if that kind of makes sense. So I'm going to go through some examples of what that looks like in a second, but every role should have a deliverable attached to it, okay? Now, for those of you who've done this before and, maybe want to, tried it out, maybe it worked, maybe it blew up in your face. So mistakes to be aware of or things to avoid if you're going to do this. One is I find a lot of people get excited and they make way too many deliverables. They're like, you're in charge of, hitting this in sales, this in margin, this in quality rating, this in the training of our staff, and they have like 7 different things they got to go hit with numbers. It makes the mind get confused, right? A confused mind ultimately does nothing and kind of forgets about their goals entirely because they don't understand what they're truly in charge of. I always say 1 to 3 deliverables per role is good, right? The other thing I've seen is sometimes you'll give somebody a deliverable that they have no control over actually directly achieving themselves, right? So they'll feel held back by somebody else on the team and be like, it's not my fault, it's that they're not hitting their goal, so I can't hit my goal, right? If you're a sales guy, you're like, I can't hit my goal because my lead generation team's not generating me leads. Well, you should have them in charge of also generating partially anyways, their own lead gen, right? Or the production team's like, I can't produce the work because I'm not given the work to go do. And there should be some level of control that each role has directly over their ability to achieve these numbers you're trying to help them with. And the last thing is make sure it doesn't break team unity, right? So if it's, I'm using a lot of sales analogies, but if you think about it, if you have a sales team out there and they're all trying to book work in the same area and they're all competing against each other and they're not sharing leads because their lead is theirs, it breaks team unity. So you got to watch that a little bit as well. Okay. Now, let's go into our final term and then we'll get into some of the actual structural piece of this. We've got a role we defined, we've got a deliverable attached to that role, And now we need to list out the accountabilities, right? This is the stuff that a lot of us do have. It's the detailed list of activities that an employee is responsible for. It's broken down by various aspects of what they go do, and it's often quite influenced by the deliverables. And what do I mean by that? If you're in charge of keeping the quality rating score of your customer at the end of the job at a 9 out of 10 average, rating, what are all the customer service responsibilities you have to make sure that happens, right? Are you the one doing the initial walk around? Are you dealing with customer complaints? Are you working with the crews to increase quality? Like, those are the tasks, the activities you have to achieve to get that number to 9 out of 10, right? So I'll show you how we do this through a job description in a second, but we've all seen this before too. If we don't tell them what their accountabilities are and are not, people often will get confused and they'll all do the same job. They'll all avoid things that they weren't told to go do. So then you end up doing it. And there's crossover, right? And what is a really good way to set up your org structure is to think through the entire workflow from lead all the way to invoice and everything that happens in between. And where do somebody's accountabilities start? And where do they end, and how are they passed on to the next person, right? So think about, a production line of vehicles, right? The Ford manufacturing plant is a very good understanding of who's accountable for what, who's putting on the steering wheel, who's putting the frame together, who's putting, the gas pedal in. Everybody has their accountabilities that directly relates to the person before them, and they directly pass it on to the person after them. Okay, so some terms to be aware of, some things, some context setting. But to make a really good org structure, you need well thought through roles with deliverables attached to every single role and a lot of clarity on who's accountable for what, if that kind of makes sense. Because one thing I've noticed too, if you don't tell people what they're accountable for, within 3 months of hiring them, they usually made their own responsibility list of what they will do and not do. And suddenly they get derailed by like, what do you mean we got to work weekends? It's like, yeah, you're accountable for achieving production goals and we have to work weekends because we had rain for a week. It's like, that's not my job, right? We've all heard that before. That's not my job. So setting up accountabilities early on helps mitigate that. So what do we do with all this? Well, we need to build an org structure that really harnesses the power of these 3 terms. So one of the first things you do is build out something that's visual that looks like this. So give me a quick yes or no. How many of you have built out an org chart that has like you and it has the people below you and it kind of says like who does what? How many of you have something like this built either on paper or in the computer somewhere? So Tiffany says yes. What else? Sure do. Awesome. So here's something to add to your org chart. If you haven't done this already, a lot of people have not. Make sure before you go think through what everybody's going to go do, think through what everybody's going to be delivering, right? What is the number that they need to achieve to be worth their weight or to be worth their salary or to be worth their structure of pay to make sure there's an ROI created by role, right? Especially for overhead positions. A lot of companies are always nervous to like hire another project manager or an office administrator or sales manager or whatever, because they're like, it's just pure overhead. How are we going to make money back on that? Well, if you give every role a clear number they need to achieve, you can justify that salary or that pay structure. But if it's just, hey, help us manage more production, we just got more coming in the door, we have no idea how much more this year, but just do what we tell you, you're not really setting yourself up for any clarity on whether or not that role is going to be an ROI, or they're just going to start taking on, somebody else's tasks and get kind of like caught in the rat's nest, right? I'm sure you've all felt this before, where you have your company running and you just feel like you're adding people and the productivity is waning. And it's just like, I'm adding more people to get the exact same thing done that I used to do 5 years ago myself. You guys ever felt that before? And it's often because people just kind of get caught into the mix, right? You see Office Space and you see these guys just typing at their computer, fake working half the time because everybody's piled on top of each other with real no good org structure. So start with the deliverables. You can see here, we've got this example here where we've got $3 million a year needs to be produced this year by the company at a 32% gross profit margin. And we need to keep a quality score of 60% net promoter, which is basically 60% of our customers go above and beyond to basically tell others about us, to refer us. Within that, we've broken the goals down by role, right? So we've got our sales manager trying to hit 3.2 million. It's actually a little higher than the company goal, but it allows for there to be some work at the end of the year, because once you're done selling, it's not produced next day. It's usually, there's a bit of a runway of production that has to happen after. This person is directly in charge of keeping their sales team's sales ratio or closing ratio at 55%. So if we're going to give you a certain amount of leads, make sure you take care of them and you're not just like closing at 20%, right? We need to make sure these deals actually close. And they're in charge, because they're the ones setting the price with the customer, they're in charge of maintaining a 35% gross profit margin in the jobs that they book, right? So they're setting up the production team for success with a profitable job. They're setting up the marketing team for success because they're taking care of the leads in a responsible way. And they're setting up the actual company for success because they're committed to bringing in enough revenue to hit the financial plan, right? So they're directly tied to the success of the team. Then you've got your production manager. They need to produce 3.1 million. Again, it's a little higher in the company. Now, this is an interesting reason why I would say to do this, because people don't always hit their goals 100% of the time. And if you've set up a financial plan at 3 million with a gross margin of whatever it is, 32% for this example, and you've got overhead to pay for, every dollar that they don't book is a dollar that goes directly to the bottom line or does not. So give them a little bit of buffer room. So if they do miss, you're not sucking it on the bottom end with low financial or low profitability in your financials. This person's also in charge of maintaining a 95% customer satisfaction rating. So they don't know long-term who's promoting and referring, but they do know if they leave the job and 95% of the customers would recommend them, they've done their part, right? And then ultimately from there, hiring and training, these people are in charge of hiring and training the production staff. If you look below, everybody's got a broken down version of the person above them's goal, right? So this crew leader is trying to hit 1.5 million. This person's trying to hit 1.6, which equals this project manager's overall goal. What we're doing when we do this is we're baking in like a want for the leader to do nothing more than to help their team below them, right? So the owner's job is essentially to help these 3 people hit their goal. That is it. The owner's job is not to do these 3 people's jobs or parts of their job. Their entire focus is, how do I help you hit your goal? This guy's entire focus is, how do I help these 2 people help hit their goal, right? And we're setting up good accountability structure where people actually want to help their subordinates below them. What this will do, this is the biggest thing I noticed when I did this, is it took a lot of the burden off of me of being everybody's boss. I wasn't feeling like a glorified babysitter anymore. I was feeling a lot more like a coach, right? I went from being people's boss to people's coach. And how I could, like a good indicator of that is people were starting to come to me being like, Danny, I need your help. I'm falling behind on my goal. Can you please come into the field and help me? Versus me being like, hey, bro, all the jobs you're producing aren't profitable. What's going on? Leave me alone. The customer's happy. We're showing up on time. What's the problem? Right? I'm now having them basically want to come to me versus me having to come to them, if that kind of makes sense. And that type of structure is extremely healthy in just developing people long-term. And I'll say for the leaders in the room, it takes a lot of the burn off of you of just trying to constantly chase and harass people. Like they're coming to you versus you coming to them. Okay. So some food for thought on this org structure, and something to kind of look at as far as what you've done for your own business. Maybe think about putting the deliverables into it before you even think through the responsibilities. Final point on this, when I'm building this stuff out, I usually build out some level of like quality, volume, and or profit metric that they're in charge of. Because if it's all about volume, people will produce a lot of work, but they'll do it unprofitably. If it's all about quality, they might do, the work extremely slowly and the customer will be super happy, but we might not make money and it might back up production. If it's all about profit, people make sometimes some really weird decisions that don't benefit the customer at all and affects quality. So when you have it about all 3, it helps them make a little bit more of like a well-rounded decision. So anyways, some food for thought on that. Now, how do we take this org structure and make it real? First thing we want to do is make sure we have some level of like employment agreement that reflects this. So if we're setting up an org structure where we're trying to hold tension to these goals, and if I just show people that chart on a Tuesday and say, everyone go hit your goals now, within 3 months, 3 weeks even, they'll forget about it, right? So one thing we've done is baked in the org structure, baked in the deliverables from their org structure into their job descriptions. So you can see here, this person's deliverables is to produce 1.5 million at a 44% margin with a 9 out of 10 quality rating score. So exactly what their deliverables are baked right into the job description. Actually, what I thought I would do is show you what this can look like. Let's see if I have it here. Just give me a sec. Before there it is, employment agreement. Okay. This is for a salesperson. Actually, and this one is for, there we go, project manager. So you can see here, I've got their deliverables listed here. And for every deliverable, I have a list of their accountabilities below, right? So if this person is trying to deliver projects on budget and on schedule, aka hit 1.5 million at a 44% margin, here's their production responsibilities, right? If a person's trying to, maintain customer service, aka maintain a 9 out of 10 quality rating score with their customer, this is their customer service responsibilities. So now every task they're in charge of is directly related to a result. And now it's a lot more objective to be able to give them feedback and be like, hey, like we're at a 8 out of 10 quality rating score on average with you right now. So I get that you feel like you're doing all the tasks appropriately. Let's go work on certain areas because clearly it's not hitting the mark, right? Versus just coming to them and being like, your quality sucks, customers are upset, what are you doing? It's, hey, we can measure it. We can physically see where you should be and where you currently are. And now you can work on something more objective with them versus just being that angry boss coming down on them, right? What else is in here? There's a reporting structure. So it's like, who do you report to? When do you prep? And when do you prep and when do you do your, what's called the GS into it in a second? What are you reporting on, right? So a lot of people are like, I just want to do my job. I don't need to log numbers in the CRM system every 2 weeks. And why are we doing this? And it's because you're trying to hit a number. We're going to measure it together and I'm going to coach you. And for hitting these numbers, I'll give you a base salary, but I'll also bake in a bonus package that is directly relational to these net metrics, right? So you're just like, look, we've got a financial plan we need to hit. We need to break that down into deliverables by role. We now need to make sure we reinforce those deliverables by drawing up a job description. And in that, give them specific tasks they need to do to be able to achieve those goals, a structured way to report in and get coaching, and a structured bonus structure that everybody kind of aligns around because they're going to benefit when you benefit now. I'll give you actually a really good example of this bonus structure. One of the best ones I ever put in was, this one's for project managers. But I remember sitting down and being like, how do I get them to think like me, right? How do I get like quality, volume, and profit all to be a part of their thought process? And one of the best things I did was I put in what I called a gross profit driver. And what it was I said to a project manager, numbers for example's sake, hey, I need you to go produce $1 million this year at a 30% margin, okay? So you're in charge of the labor and the productivity of our labor. Materials, not as much, but you can work with the crews on making sure we don't have too much wastage. But I want to make sure you produce $1 million at 30%. So what am I essentially saying to this person? I'm saying for your salary of, let's call it $80,000 this year, I need you to bring back $300,000, right? 30% of $1 million. And if you do that, you'll have earned your 80K. Now, here's the thing. If you want to make more money this year, anything you bring in above $300,000, I'll give you 10% of, right? So if you produce $1.5 million at 30% or $1 million at 35%, combination of those, you've made the company more money. And in return, I'd like to give you 10% of that back. And I would make that unlimited, like an unlimited cap that they can go after, right? So now they can think a bit more like an owner and think beyond just like produce more work. It's like, how do we be more productive with our teams? How do we use the labor and productivity hours to make sure we execute on more jobs quicker? How do we make sure the jobs come in more profitably? They're thinking more dynamically. And the great thing for them is there's no cap to their earning potential, right? It's up to them to go do more. So anyway, some food for thought on bonus structures, but they can work in certain scenarios. They can actually backfire. I won't go through all the details of it, but it's make sure they're very simple, sure they're directly aligned to people's accountabilities, like things they're directly in charge of going to do, and make sure that they make a lot of sense. They're like easy to track and easy to understand, because when they become complicated again, people shut down. You don't have to say yes or no on this, but I've seen a lot of our members, they get excited by this type of stuff. They set up a really complicated bonus structure, and by the end of the year, nobody has any idea how much they've actually earned in their bonuses, and the owner's kind of like paying out their bonus checks, being like, you don't even know how much you're getting, do you? And they're like, no. And now it just becomes this like money they're paying without actually influencing performance in their people. So anyway, some food for thought on job descriptions and bonus structures. Let's keep moving here. So this is great. Sets the environment and the tone for the fact that we're going to have goals this year. We're going to align together as a team and hit something. How do you actually drive performance in people? Well, there's something we call GS&R, which stands for goal setting and review. So curious, just give me a quick yes or no. How many of you have a meeting with your staff one-on-one? So not a group meeting, but a one-on-one meeting with them, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, where you help them figure out, hey, where are you at? Where do you need to be by next week or by next month? And how can I help you? And you actually coach them. You hold accountability with them, and you're with them one-on-one on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. Just give me a quick yay or nay. How many do that? Not yet. James, okay, cool. Thanks for being honest. What else? You can say yes or no. It's all good. There's no judgment. Not yet, working on it. Cool. So a couple of you have been thinking about it. A couple of you have not done it. It's a commitment, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But one of the best things I can say about this is don't rush to go do this, right? If you can't track the numbers effectively, if you haven't thought through your org structure well, if you don't have clear accountabilities by role, it's very tough to sit down and start to do these types of meetings and make them worthwhile, right? If you've ever read or heard the book called Death by Meetings, it's because a lot of people set up meetings on top of meetings on top of meetings because they want to support their team, but they don't have a structure that's meaningful to do it in. But when you've got good goals or good deliverables, clear accountabilities, a good job description, you can start to build out an actual GSR model now where it's once a week, like Jennifer does, once a month, bi-weekly, where they're working towards something, right? Right. So they've got a dashboard. So one of the things that we give all our members is a dashboard for not only their company, but every individual, let's call it management staff, because most of the people in the field are not filling out Excel sheets, but for their management team to go goal versus actual on how they're doing on their core metrics that are in their job description. And every week they can see, are they ahead? Are they behind? By how much? Why? And it's your job as their boss to help them get to their year-end goal, right? That's what I mean by kind of going from someone's boss to somebody's coach. That kind of makes sense. So anyway, some notes on this. It obviously helps you keep a pulse on what's happening in the business, helps you hold accountability to all the stuff we're talking about, helps you provide a lot of direction and support, right? So sometimes I'm not talking to people even about their numbers, but we have this weekly meeting now where I can see, hey, emotionally something's going on at home. Like I can talk to you about that, and I'm not thrown off by at the end of the week things didn't get done, or technically you don't understand something, and now I realize like I got to get out in the field with you and coach you on this one thing, right? A good example is, again, I'm using a lot of sales analogies, but if I'm working with my sales team and I'm like, hey, your closing ratio is much lower than it should be. So I've got my doggy. Let me just text my wife. You can probably hear my dog in the background. Can you grab? Sorry. He's barking like crazy. Where was my thought on this? Yeah, if I've got a metric that's lower in somebody and I'm like, hey, we need to increase that by 10% by next month to be able to have you sell at a certain rate, I now know what to work on with them versus just sell more, be happier, I don't know, work harder on handling objections with the customer. I can say like, let's go in the field, let's spend a day together, go to estimate together and see what's really going on and try and increase that sales ratio from 20% to 30%. And that's our goal for the next month. Let's do that together. You can be more strategic in your coaching. Now, with all that said, it takes a lot to be a leader to do this effectively. And for a lot of the people I work with, and I'm sure you probably feel similar, it's hard to pull away from what you're currently doing and make space to actually get this in place. And I would say it's probably, if you have a team that's eclipsing over 10, 20, 30, you're getting up into that range, it's probably more important than ever that you start to really think through, how do I actually step away as a leader and make this my number one thing I do, my number one job? And I'll go through some points on this as well. So most of the people we work with, when I start with them, they're not all like this, but generally, they're stuck in the day-to-day, right? Even if they're not on the job site doing the actual work, they're stuck in managing the jobs or booking all the jobs or doing, the checks on the back end to make sure the administrative stuff's in place. And so they're busy, right? A lot of people I work with, 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. It's very rare to meet an owner who's actually working 40 hours a week, stable in their business, has time to manage their team. And how does this happen? Well, I find that in startup mode in the first 5 to 10 years of business, that's just what it takes to get through, right? And what got you to that original level of success now, where maybe you're at $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million bucks, isn't going to work to get you to that next level. And we need to start to think through, like, what is my time actually worth? And what is it I'm actually spending it doing that needs to be delegated down, right? So a lot of guys, getting materials, seeing what's wrong with the customer, getting a van fixed, getting cash flow, so they can pay payroll. All these things are great, but they're jobs that can be delegated down. And in the beginning, it might have been vital that you do it, but that's not necessarily true moving forward, right? You need to be spending time, reviewing, the job cost cards to help your production team, doing staff training to handle client issues so you don't have to keep doing it, qualifying candidates for interviews so you're ahead of the game of who you're going to be hiring next, reviewing your monthly cash flow to make sure you have, payroll secured way in advance, being proactive in your approach versus reactive, if that kind of makes sense. So, quick thing you can do is to reclaim 5 hours a week is this quick little exercise. And actually, before I even get you to do it, everyone grab your phone or grab a calculator on your desk or whatever it is. And I would love you to just do this exercise. It'll help open your eyes a little bit to this. I want to identify for each person in the webinar, what is the actual opportunity cost of like doing what you're doing. And for everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. So what I want you to do first is I want you to put in your calculator the amount of hours you work in a week. So just whatever that is, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, maybe it's 60 hours a week. How many hours do you work in a week? So just type that in your calculator. Don't tell me yet what it is. Next thing, I want you to times that by the amount of people you lead. So I would say even for myself right now, I'm probably doing about 45 to 50 hours a week. And I have directly, I have about, well, on my team, I have 32 people on our team. Okay, so I've got a number. Please type in that number in the chat box. I'd be curious to see what that is. So this is the amount of hours now that you're influencing on a weekly basis based on how many hours you work. So what is that? 2,250. It's a lot of hours, right? Mine came to 1,440, 270, Jared. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, 1,350. So something to be very aware of, right? For every hour you work, how many other hours are going on in your company? And what's the opportunity cost of spending time doing just one of those hours, taking care of one of those jobs versus working on things that would influence all of those hours, right? Now, I'm not saying take your whole week and throw everything out and only work on leadership tactics, because you'll probably go broke doing that too, right? But a bit of a transition to spending a couple more hours a week can be huge, right? If you're spending 5 hours a week and you've got 20 people on your team, that's 200 influenceable hours that you can put towards leadership of your people. I guess the biggest thing I'm saying is this: there's a huge opportunity cost in spending too much time in the day-to-day. And as your company gets bigger and bigger and you get into the, couple hundred, 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000 hours, it becomes apparently clear the hours you're spending trying to finish payroll, get material to a job site, whatever it is, these mundane daily tasks, how much they're actually costing you, because you're not actually leading your team during that time and you don't have time to do it, right? So to give everyone 5 hours a week back, here's a quick exercise I do every single year. It helps clear up my mind and clear up my list of what overwhelms me often, which is all these little mundane things. Make a list of everything that you do in a week, okay? Once you've made that list, circle everything that's high time consumption and low skill. That's usually an indicator of things that should be delegated down to your existing team. Maybe it's enough of stuff that you should be identifying what your next hire is actually going to be. And it's arguably going to be one of the more affordable hires because it's the most mundane stuff, right? So it's the high time consumption, low skill stuff. Or if it feels very like automatable, look at the technology you're currently using in the company, or look at what's available in the industry and start to see, is this something that we can actually start to automate now, right? Or even beyond automate. Have any of you guys ever heard of Upwork.com? Some work 7 hours and some work 8 hours a day. Yeah, fair enough. Have you guys ever heard of Upwork.com? It's essentially a place where you can delegate down mundane tasks to people that would work for you all over the world remotely. And it takes a lot of the burden off of this stuff that even for your team might not be worth their time, right? This exercise is, largely for people who are managing people. But if you even look at like how many hours are your team spending doing things that are just a waste of time. So we'll give you a download actually on this as well. So you'll be able to kind of go through a little bit of an exercise, make your list, circle what's high time consumption and low skill, and start to identify what should be delegated, what should be hired for, or what can be automated. Anything else I want to say on that? The only thing I would just reinforce about this is this is an annual exercise. Your company grows every year. There's new dynamics to the business. There's new things that change, new hires that come in. And if you're not doing this every year, it's easy to get caught up doing stuff that maybe last year made sense, but this year is getting in the way. So something to do every single year and something to kind of keep you out of the tidal wave of work that keeps coming our way, right? All right. Now, to help with all this, once you've started to do this and to regain that time and not just waste it on Facebook, is to actually block schedule your life out, right? So give me a quick yes or no on this. How many of you have a block schedule? So it's either in a calendar somewhere, on a piece, it's on a, whatever, Harvard planner. How many of you have like a block scheduled life where you know what you're doing and you've blocked out time for it? So Marshall says yes, awesome. Some of you probably yes, no, maybe. do now since starting BTA Foundations. Perfect, Jared. Yeah, no, I wish. It's a game changer. Like, it's funny. I teach this stuff. I would say my business partner, Igor, is the master of a lot of these things. I've learned a lot. Being in business since I was 18, one of the biggest things I learned was this. And it wasn't my natural strength to do this. Like, I am an ADD entrepreneur with lots of ideas. You can probably tell I talk really quickly. And I'm sorry for those that I've talked pretty quick today. But my mind's racing a million miles a minute. And to be able to get a structure in my day ahead of time before I go and start burning up turf helps me a ton. And one of the things I've noticed is having themes in my day. So like Mondays would be my coaching days. You can see here I'm doing GSNR with different people on my team, right? Tuesdays would be my in the field days where I'm just doing quotes and just taking care of my day-to-day job stuff. I've got time in my evenings and my Fridays to actually like work on the company and do some more proactive activities. But I've got themes in my days. So one thing I really recommend, I mean, for me anyways, Mondays and Tuesdays are always my best like coaching days. Meet with the team, get them off to an early start, make sure they're all productive. Fridays for me anyways are really good days to work on the company. It's kind of when things are winding down and there's a bit more silence from my phone. That's me. That's what works for me. It doesn't always work for everybody the same. But what I'm doing is I'm not just putting in space randomly every week. I'm allocating literally months in advance. I will always coach my people on Mondays and Tuesdays. I will always work on the business on Friday afternoons. And I'm giving myself a rhythm and a structure. And what that does for my team is it gives them rhythm and structure and things to account, to count on me for. If I'm trying to do GSNR or goal setting review meetings with my team, and every week it's at a different time, and sometimes I can't show up because I got dragged into something last minute, the whole idea of accountability is gone because I'm not even accountable to them, right? But if they know every Monday Danny's got time to do this, their level of buy-in is highly increased, right? They know every Wednesday and Thursday, if we're going to do a coaching meeting, it's going to be on one of those 2 days because that's when Danny comes out to the field. It creates some level of like rhythm, both for them and I will say especially for me, right? And living in that rhythm is a much more like sane place to be. I know at the end of the month, every month we do our financial review, and our financials need to be due by the 10th of the month, so that on the 15th of the month I can sit down and do a proper financial review. And we start to create structure in our organization. Everybody's run into that beat of that drum, right? But when you don't have this, or maybe you do have a block schedule but you don't pre-fill it out, things just get filled, other things get filled into it. And most of those things are last minute emergency things that are just fires. And you might still be very busy, but you're not busy on things that are building the future. You're busy on just taking care of the day-to-day, and you get caught in that rhythm. So I went through a class on this on priority management. It took me 8 months to get used to this. It took me 3 hours to learn the concept. It took me 8 months to get to a place where I had control back on my time. So this is not a short-term, like quickly throw in a block schedule to be fine tomorrow. This is a commitment where you suddenly realize every week, I want to make sure my next 2 to 4 weeks are planned out. Hey, if stuff's got to move, that's fine. I can move it, but at least it's now movable versus something that just never gets done. If that kind of makes sense. And I've got rhythm to my life. Always a work in progress. Totally, Jared. And I agree. Like I've had, since I was 18, some semblance of this. I'd say I got really good at this by the time I was about 21, 22. And if you go back in my life to when I was like 25, I like totally derailment. And especially when we started Breakthrough Academy, like everything was in chaos again. And I had to rein this back in, right? But I was intentional to do it because I could see things weren't sustainable if I didn't. So it's good. Those are some thoughts on block scheduling. So we went through a lot. I'd be curious to hear from everything we went through, from building out your deliverables, building out your job descriptions, having an org chart based in deliverables, having GSNR meetings with your staff, having scheduled time to work with your team and build out the company, doing maybe the 5 hours a week exercise and starting to get some stuff out of your calendar. What was the one thing out of everything we talked about today that you're like, that I could actually do? What was that one thing? Just give me a bit of feedback, would be good. So, oh, and you got your PSMJ stuff in there. We'll go through that in a sec too. Yeah. What was the one thing? So org chart, awesome, perfect. Yeah, better org chart with deliverables, perfect. Yeah, it's a big one for a lot of people. It's just helping to visualize and see it. Systemizing the day of the week on a block schedule. It's cool. Huge project, pricing, huge price project I have been putting off. Just blocked out 2 hours a day for the next few weeks. Perfect. Yeah, just slowly chip away at that big rock. Using the word rhythm and implementing it. Totally. Strategy and delegating tasks to take further decisions with demand. Cool. Perfect. Structure, right? Just this one thing that rings in my head, even to this day, as I grow this company, it's Danny, like what's gotten me here is not going to get me there. And there needs to be a change in my behavior and the way I spend my time. And if I'm not conscious of that, I will get taken over again by the tidal wave. And a lot of us in this industry are experiencing growth that's far beyond anything we're actually prepared for. And if we don't have some level of proactivity in our life, it's easy to get completely awash by the whole thing. So a couple things to help you guys, like I said. So I'm going to give me 2 seconds. I'm going to get you guys these downloads. So we've got an exercise you can do on reclaiming 5 hours a week. I'm going to give you, it's like a 15-page employment agreement that you can actually go through an exercise to build out your own. There's actually a video that goes along with it as well. So it's, yeah, there's a little walkthrough video. There's a download. There's an actual instruction manual on how to fill these things out, a template that you can use so you don't have to build it from scratch. It's pretty nifty. So we'll give you that. And then something also on compensation and bonus structure. Again, it'll be a little video walkthrough with a little exercise to think through like what's the best bonus structure for your team. For those who want to know a bit about what we're doing, I'll tell you a bit about us and then I'll close this out. So we are a company that's completely committed to working with the contracting space. So everybody we work with is in landscaping, painting, renovations, home services, things of that sort. Roofing is a big one. And we've, I think, approached the industry with a good, healthy mix of like real down to earth, like grassroots strategies and understanding to what it's going to take for a lot of you guys to grow as entrepreneurs. You know, everybody I work with is an owner of the company. So we work specifically with owners. We get their language, we get your moves. I've been there, we've done it ourselves. And we've tried to figure out how do we actually bring value without trying to be, you know, coachy or being corporate-y, right? How do we just get into the grassroots and do what actually matters? We currently manage about 1.2 billion under management. So that's not our revenue, but that's all of our members together. We live track everybody's stuff. So we can actually see their financials, their sales, their production. We can see what's going well, what's not going well. I'd say our increase in revenue is pretty normal. It's actually, this is 2019 stats too, actually, but this is revenue increase by about 21%, that's just the market. That's not us. But what is really neat is we've been able to increase our average profitability per member by about 40%. And it comes from a lot of just looking at how to attack efficiencies versus just growing in volume. So we do lots of stuff with you. So we build out your dashboards, we build out all your goals, we figure out what your goal versus actual is every 2 weeks. We have an annual strategic plan that we're working on to hit that. We build out your organizational structure. So like who should be doing what. We build out your employment agreements so we can actually bake them in properly and hold accountability. We bake out your recruiting campaigns to actually have an ideal candidate you're trying to find and actually help you reverse engineer the entire recruiting process. We help you understand how to onboard people properly and do proper interviews and look at people's past behavior to predict future results to make sure they're a right fit for the right role. We've built out all the training processes, which is kind of neat. So we've templated thousands of SOPs, standard operating procedures that are for landscaping, painting, renovations, roofing, and so on. They're all built for their own silos. So you don't have to build all your training material yourself. And we bake all that around a strategic plan where we hold the owner directly accountable to hitting their year-end goals. And so you actually have a coach holding you accountable to help your team be held accountable, to help your, and so on and so forth. And we have direction and we have structure. So I know one of the members is on here right now. You're just in your first year with us, but if you have any typing comments or testimonial to what we've been doing with you, feel free. Other than that, just quick context on how we do this. We have a toolbox, which we call is basically like a learning management system. So there's how-to videos for everything. There's downloadable resources for everything. So we never teach you something and say, go figure it out yourself. We're saying, here's an example file, here's a template, and here's a how-to video to go along with it. If I'm honest, it's really good stuff. It's useless without a coach. So everybody's given a coach to work with that directly gets to know them and holds them accountable to their goals and has one-on-one meetings so that they can actually get a chance to really get their questions answered. And there's a big community here. Like I was saying earlier, there's about 415 active companies we work with. Everybody knows each other. Everyone holds each other to kind of what's going on in their business. They idea share, and we're a pretty fast-paced, moving collective, brain meld of contractors that are innovating in this industry and sharing our ideas pretty liberally, which is kind of neat. So this is what we look for. So I look for people who are entrepreneurs versus just, see themselves as an entrepreneur over like a contractor. See the people who are in residential and service mix. So like I said, it's all contractors we work with. They've been in business for a few years. This isn't their first rodeo. They've got some people on their team, right? A lot of what we talk about is leadership and development of your team. So how to recruit, train, and operate, right? If you don't have a team, it's not as much to talk about. They have the strong desire to grow. So I'm not a personal motivational coach. Our team is not either. We are much more like the engineer for a lot of entrepreneurs who are needing structure but struggling to put it in place. That is our role. And ultimately, yeah, we want to work with people that are seeking this. We can't force this on people. If you want to, seek leadership development and growth within your organization and pull back out of the day-to-day, and that's you're already working on that, it's already a part of what you're doing, it's usually a good sign that we should probably chat. So let me in the chat box put the link for you guys to get these downloads. Should be in there right now. Let me see if I can get it clickable. Actually, just give me a sec here. Basically, if you can't click on it, let me get you a direct link that you can click on. There, this is the direct link. Boom, there you go. Click on that. It'll take you to this. So you can basically just start to fill out basically what's your basic information. If you're interested to chat with us, make sure you check off this box here. It just says, send me the templates and let's talk about how you can help me in my business. If you're not, you just want the downloads and the templates for now, that's totally fine. Just put, I just want the templates. So this is our way of just kind of knowing who's interested to talk to us. We don't have a sales call for quite a while, actually. It's quite a bit more of, are you a good fit? Where are you at in your business? What's your biggest challenge? We're analyzing you just as much as you would analyze us to make sure we have a good fit. And if you're interested just to have a chat to learn a bit more, you can definitely just check off in that box and we'll make sure we do. Other than that, any thoughts, questions, things you guys would want to have some clarity on? A couple more minutes and we also got to close out here. So I'll let you guys click on that link, start to fill that out. If there's any questions that come in, happy to answer them. I'll give us a minute or two to go through that. I don't see a link. Okay, that is good to know. There we go. Did that link go through? Give me a quick yes. Okay, perfect. There you go. Tease you with all this and then give you nothing. Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah, click on that link. It'll take you to this site. You can start to fill it out and get some of these things to work on immediately, which is good. And if you want to chat with us, that would be helpful to know who's who. I think that's mostly it. Be my last message on all of this. I'll say this. One thing I've noticed working with all these people is, and me included actually, it's super common for entrepreneurs to be kind of shitty at doing this themselves. And you get to a point in business where you kind of know you have to build out structure. You have to be able to build out a system that runs the company without you. You know it in your mind. You fully understand what needs to be done, but trying to translate that down to your team and actually get it built in a meaningful way is, for a lot of people, nearing impossibility. I mean, they get pieces of it built, but they're missing like the core framework. And I would say our ideal client we work with is somebody who they're already working on this, but their skill set, their natural ability is not to go and build all this stuff themselves. And so we've done the hard work. I've surrounded myself with what I call engineers around me. I'm a visionary in a big way. I can't build most of what I've even showed you, but I understand it. And I think it's important that whether you work with us or you're out on your own trying to figure this out, and you are in that space where you're like, I am a visionary, not an implementer, that you surround yourself with implementers on your team. It doesn't always have to just be you doing everything. If anything, as my company's grown, I've really stepped back and actually put a lot of other people in charge of a lot of where we're heading. And it's a bit of an ego thing to do that. You got to let go of your ego, but it's the most healthy thing you could do versus get stuck in your own mess. So those are my thoughts. I will let you take it over.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We so appreciate you all being here. Thank you, Danny, for again agreeing to be our lovely MBA speaker for 6 weeks. Hopefully we will be seeing all of you at MetalCon in just a few short weeks, only 5 weeks away, and we will be in Tampa. If you haven't already gotten your tickets, please get your tickets now, and we hope to see you then. One final thing is we do have our top product awards. So that should have come through in the chat box just a little bit ago. I will also put it back again here. Please feel, I'm sending that just to panelists. Sorry, guys. Send that to everybody. So please feel free to click that link and vote for your favorites for the top product award. We will be announcing that on site as well. So thank you all again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.